Have you ever stood under the blinding flash of 1,000 paparazzi cameras, flashing your signature $1,000,000 smile to a crowd of adoring fans, while inside your chest, your soul is completely freezing over? For over 3 decades, the world has looked at Brad Pitt through the lens of absolute perfection, a face carved with the golden ratio of a Greek god, the rugged, effortlessly cool charisma of a golden-era movie star, and a career that completely redefined the landscape of Hollywood. People didn't just admire him, they desperately wanted to be him. Every step he took was paved by the red carpet, and every single smile he gave could exhaust millions of gallons of ink across global tabloids. Yet, behind the flashing paparazzi bulbs, behind the heavy mansion gates and the polished public relations statements, lies a brutal, devastating truth, a truth that he has never truly shared until today. Behind that calm, nonchalant nod and effortless smile is a 62-year-old man enduring a relentless series of quiet reflections in the dead of night. A man carrying the silent torment of a broken promise and an agonizing slow-motion realization that there are some women, once you let them walk out of your life, you will never, ever be able to piece the shattered fragments of your soul back together. She wasn't just another famous name passing through the tabloid headlines, nor was she a fleeting co-star in a short-term blockbuster project. She was the one who altered the very fabric of his soul, the one who witnessed him before the blinding madness of his peak, and the only anchor who ever taught him what true unconditional peace actually looks like. Today, we will pull back the velvet curtain to touch the rawest emotional truth, Brad Pitt's late-night confession about Jennifer Aniston, the woman whom neither a decade of a chaotic marriage to Angelina Jolie nor 1,000 miles of media warfare could ever erase from the deepest chambers of his heart. A story that will force you to look back at your own choices and the terrifying price a man pays when he takes true peace for granted. To understand why a man who seemingly has it all could fall into such profound, silent regret as he crosses the twilight of his life, we must travel back in time. We must return to the dusty, wind-swept plains of the American Midwest. Born in 1963 in Oklahoma and raised in Springfield, Missouri, young William Bradley Pitt grew up in a devout, disciplined household. Yet he carried an underlying, simmering blood of rebellion within him. Do you see the psychological parallel here? Just like any of us when we are young, we tend to view absolute stability as a suffocating cage. We always think that happiness and greatness lie somewhere far away, on those glittering, chaotic peaks we have yet to touch. Brad Pitt in his youth was no different. He detested the mundane, repetitive stillness of his quiet hometown. His craving to escape was so consuming that he chose to drop out of university, just 2 weeks shy of earning his degree. He threw himself into a journey to Los Angeles, with a mere $300 in his pocket, accepting the lowest, most grueling jobs, just to survive. From wearing a suffocating giant chicken costume, to wave in customers for a fast food diner, to driving exotic dancers through the vice-filled streets of late-night clubs. It was the sheer harshness of those days, rolling at the bottom of society, that chiseled a fiercely wild Brad Pitt, a stray beast driven by an insatiable, boundless ambition. He wasn't afraid of pain. He was only terrified of being anonymous. He plunged into acting roles like a moth rushing toward a flame, willingly stripping away his own life energy. And when Hollywood handed him the crown of a global sex symbol after the movie Thelma and Louise, he truly believed he had mastered his destiny, that he possessed the entire universe. But the young man back then did not know that standing on the highest peak without an emotional anchor only makes the inner thirst wilder and more prone to a catastrophic fall. He desperately needed a safe harbor, but the rebellious blood of his youth kept pushing him back into tempestuous seas. And then, In 1998, destiny brought Jennifer Aniston into his life. Picture this: in a Hollywood rampant with traps, transactional relationships, profound hypocrisy, and layers of cosmetic masks. Jennifer appeared, like a breath of fresh morning air, pure, wholesome, and overflowing with healing energy. At that time, she was America's sweetheart, riding the wave of the massive global success of Friends. If Brad Pitt was the embodiment of a wildfire, ready to incinerate everything around him with his inner chaos, Jennifer was the cool, soothing water, gently calming his unspoken wounds and silent insecurities. Looking back years later, even Brad's closest inner circle had to admit a fundamental truth. The time spent with Jennifer was when Brad Pitt was at his most human, his most grounded, and when he found true equilibrium. They married in July 2000, in a wedding that felt like a real-life fairy tale perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, in Malibu. Do you remember the image of that girl with the sun-kissed smile in her sparkling sequined gown at that sacred moment? Brad Pitt looked deep into Jennifer's eyes and promised to love her, protect her, and build a peaceful sanctuary with her, far away from the toxic noise of the high society elite. Jennifer gave Brad something he had lost ever since he abandoned his hometown. That was the concept of stability. She accepted the real man behind the blinding aura, put up with his dark habits, and remained the absolute firmest anchor for him to shine. In cinematic masterpieces like Fight Club and Troy, Jennifer never tried to control him, nor did she try to force him to change. She simply provided an unconditional, safe space where he was allowed to be vulnerable, where he was permitted to shed the heavy armor of a superstar. When he returned home, yet, there is a brutal and terrifying paradox in human psychology. When we obtain peace too easily, we tend to take its value for granted. We mistake that peace for a permanent certainty. Over time, that very stability unknowingly turns into a suffocating cage for a soul hardwired for conquest and danger. Brad Pitt began to feel choked. Within the absolute safety Jennifer had meticulously built for him, he failed to realize that such peace was a supreme privilege, not a restraining shackle. And that was precisely when the darkness of chaos began to whisper to him. From the outside world, in 2005, the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith began filming, and that was the exact moment fate flipped its cards on Brad Pitt's life. If Jennifer Aniston was the embodiment of a warm, gentle summer, Angelina Jolie was a tropical hurricane, furious, dangerous, wild, and utterly untamable. Let's look straight at the raw truth. Angelina Jolie possessed a destructive magnetism for any man carrying the blood of rebellion. She wasn't merely a sexual icon. She was a woman, bearing deep, profound psychological scars, a rebellious soul that had traveled through the darkest corridors of self-destruction. When Brad Pitt faced Angelina on that set, the long-repressed instinct of a wild beast inside him violently awakened. He was utterly hypnotized by that danger. He saw in Angelina an exact mirror reflection of the madness and rebellion he had spent years trying to bury during his picture-perfect marriage. With Jennifer, the arrival of Angelina Jolie shattered Brad and Jennifer's fairy tale marriage. It was the most earth-shattering and controversial media explosion in modern Hollywood history. Faced with a choice between responsibility and peace on one hand, and wild, raw passion on the other, Brad Pitt chose to abandon his devoted wife, to plunge into an instinctive adventure with Angelina. In return, he secured a decade of living at the absolute peak of global power. They traversed war-torn lands together, adopted children together, and built the Brangelina Empire, the most powerful and media-magnetic dynasty in the world. But what is the cost of dancing with a violent storm? You cannot demand a fire to burn with untamed, frantic madness, while simultaneously expecting it to bring absolute safety and warmth to a home. The relationship with Angelina was packed with intoxicating passion, but it was equally filled with mutually destructive conflicts, the arrogance of two colossal egos, the crushing pressure of relentless public scrutiny, and the sheer chaos of managing a massive family. Slowly drained Brad Pitt's life energy, he began to turn to alcohol as his sole weapon to escape a suffocating reality. The wildness he once craved had now turned into a meat grinder, obliterating the last remnants of peace left in his soul. Ultimately, the bitter divorce in 2016, coupled with endless legal warfare and traumatic allegations of violence, served as the cruel astronomical price tag for a mistake driven by pure instinct. They say, a man only truly grows up when he is willing to stand before the ruins he created with his own hands and courageously admit, I was wrong. Following the total collapse of his marriage to Angelina Jolie, the world witnessed a completely different Brad Pitt. He vanished from extravagant Hollywood parties and abandoned the vanity of the red carpet. He locked himself away in a small sculpting studio in Los Angeles, confronting naked loneliness and cold pieces of clay. In a groundbreaking 2017 interview with GQ magazine, where he appeared with a hollowed face and tear-filled eyes, Brad admitted for the very first time that alcoholism had become a poison destroying his own happiness, and that he had to spend half a year of his life in strict, grueling rehab, but deep within those long nights facing four silent walls, what was truly tormenting the mind of a legend over 50 years old? It wasn't the loss of massive financial assets, nor was it his severely damaged reputation. It was the tragically late awakening to the value of the peace he had once so ruthlessly cast away. When the cheers of roaring fans faded, when the possessive intensity of instinctive romances died down, Brad Pitt's mind unconsciously drifted back to memories from nearly 20 years prior. He remembered the sun-drenched house in Malibu. He remembered the taste of those quiet mornings, where a woman used to look at him with the gentlest, warmest eyes, a love that demanded nothing, judged nothing, and carried no transactional calculations or chaotic warfare. An inner Hollywood source leaked a truth that would break anyone's heart. During his psychological healing process, Brad Pitt personally hand-wrote a lengthy, raw letter to Jennifer Aniston. It was absolutely not a selfish attempt to win her back, or a desperate plea to rekindle the past. It was the late confession of a man who had traversed half a lifetime, tasted the absolute pinnacle of global glory and the deepest, most bitter miseries, only to realize how terribly his youth and arrogance had wounded an angel. He apologized to her for betraying their vows, apologized for failing to cherish the peace she brought into his life, and apologized for letting the arrogance and selfishness of his youth wash away the most precious treasure a man could ever hold. In 2020, the world froze when Brad and Jennifer crossed paths backstage at the SAG Awards. The image of them holding hands and locking eyes ignited hopes of a century-defining reunion for millions of fans worldwide. But both Brad and Jennifer knew the cold, hard truth. Jennifer was now an independent, proud, and deeply fulfilled woman with her own life. She forgave him with immense compassion. But she will never return to the girl she used to be. And here lies the ultimate, most brutal psychological twist. Her gentle forgiveness became his permanent prison, because when an injured woman rages against you, it means she still cares. But when she forgives you with a calm smile, it means you no longer have any power over her soul. Her forgiveness, ironically, only makes the regret in Brad Pitt's heart feel more profound. more silent, and eternal. He won her peace. But he lost her forever. Looking at the Brad Pitt of today, a man well past his 60s, quiet, mature, dressed in minimalist clothing and constantly seeking stillness inside his art studio. We see a soul that has completely stopped running. He has survived cutthroat legal battles, crossed the dark days of addiction recovery, and finally, learned to surrender to compassion and inner peace. He has understood a self-evident truth. Wildness and chaos can bring a temporary, intoxicating high for youth. But only stability, sincerity, and peace can truly nourish a soul traveling through life's storms. Every time we look back at those vintage photographs from decades past, one cannot help but wonder, in some quiet moment of the present, as a lone sunset dips below the Los Angeles coastline, does Brad Pitt ever freeze, suddenly remembering that second day of July in Malibu? Does he remember the woman who taught him what it truly means to be loved unconditionally and purely? The story of Brad Pitt's life is not merely the glamorous tale of a Hollywood megastar. It is a profound human lesson, a mirror reflecting for all of us the law of choice and sacrifice and love. Do not wait until the storm tears down your life to crave a warm, peaceful home. Do not wait until your own hands have thrown away peace to realize it was the most priceless treasure of your existence. What about you? What are your thoughts on Brad Pitt's tumultuous emotional journey? In your opinion, who was the woman who truly held the key to this legendary man's heart? Until the very end? The healing stability of Jennifer Aniston, or the intense, charismatic wildness of Angelina Jolie? Share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below so we can discuss. If this video touched your emotions and gave you a moment to pause and reflect, please hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel today so you never miss our next deep dive into the lives of history's greatest legends. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, and we will see you in our next cinematic journey.